Hey, Miss Jan.
Hey, Missy.
Miss Jan, today you are reading one. These are all really. These are people that had to be activists. So they were all dealing with some really tough stuff.
Right.
Really tough stuff. But this gentleman, and the language is completely unknown to me, so some of them might be hard to pronounce or whatever. So how would you say this young man's name?
Iqbal Masih.
See,
Iqbal
I like how you
Masih.
did that there. That made
I make little
I
notes
think
for
that's so
myself,
important,
yeah.
and that's what I took a bunch of classes like on. Whenever you're reading like these kind of stuff, like that's a good thing to do. So friends out there, if you ever have to give a speech or something like that, write it like phonetically like that, so you know. But dude,
Right, so you'll see my little scribbles throughout the book,
like,
for which I apologize. I will erase it.
No, that's okay, dude. No.
Yeah.
Are we gonna be able to do it without crying though?
You know, I read it out loud to myself before I came here,
Okay.
and I think I'm going to be okay.
Okay.
But it really is.
It's tough.
Tough.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
So if you're
Yeah.
a kid watching this at home, maybe you might want to watch this one with your super special grown-up too.
Right.
Yeah. Or if you're a super special grown-up at home, as Miss Jan and I are, you might want to watch this with your kid or with another super special grown-up, so you can all cry together and think together about what a tremendous difference we all can make
What
and is
eye-opener.
needed.
Yeah. This whole group has
Yeah.
just been amazingly mind-blowing. Yeah. All in a good way. You know, from what they tried to do.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's still a struggle.
Yeah.
Okay, Iqbal Masih, fighting to end child slavery. Iqbal Masih was only 10 years old when he became an activist, and he had already spent 6 years working in a carpet factory. He knew how terrible child labor was, and he was determined to do everything he could to help end it. Iqbal was one of millions of children around the world who are forced to work for low wages and in hazardous conditions. Hazardous means it's dangerous for them. Desperately poor parents often have little choice. If the family is to survive, the children must contribute financially. Many kids work alongside their families, but others are sold to employers for a small loan. This is known as bonded labor because the child is forced to work until the loan is repaid. These bonded children make goods such as carpets, jewelry, and clothes, much of which is sold in North America and Europe. So if you're shopping, check and see the source of what you're buying and think about, who makes it. Iqbal was born in 1982 in a town called Mir-Inka, Punjab, Pakistan. His parents, Saif Masih and Inayat Bibi, were very poor. Soon after Iqbal was born, his father abandoned the family. Iqbal's mother cleaned houses to make money, and his older sisters took care of him. Iqbal started working when his father needed money to pay for another son's wedding. The banks wouldn't lend money to a poor man, so Saif spoke to the Thadakar, who owned the local carpet factory. He agreed to lend Saif money on the condition that Iqbal work for him. Iqbal was only 4 years old. The factory owner took him into a hot, stuffy room that contained 20 large looms, which are wooden frames with strands of white wool known as the warp, stretched from top to bottom. Children squatted on wood benches in front of the looms. Their job was to tie pieces of colored wool around the vertical strands and knot each piece. Then they used a special tool to tighten each row of knots, and sharp blades to clip each knot evenly so the rugs would be smooth. A good quality carpet can contain hundreds of knots per square inch. Hundreds of knots in a square inch. It's amazing. For 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, Iqbal was chained to his loom. When his training finished, he worked in the factory with other boys, but they weren't even allowed to speak to one another. The work was exhausting and dangerous. One time, Iqbal cut himself with a knife, The Thedakar yelled at him not to get blood on the carpet and dripped hot oil on the wound to stop the bleeding. It's not what we do when somebody gets hurt, right?
No.
Yeah. When Iqbal screamed, the Thedakar slapped him and told him to get back to work. Tiny fibers from the wool floated in the air, and the children breathed them in, damaging their lungs. Hunching over the loom all day led to bowed posture, and their hands and wrists ached from the repetitive work. Iqbal was always hungry. The meal during his lunch break was small, and the cost of the rice and lentils was added to his family's debt. The children were watched by a guard known as the Chaldakar. If we tried to escape, we were threatened with being thrown in boiling oil, Iqbal said. If we were slow, we often got lashed on our backs and our heads. Other punishments were worse. Children were beaten and locked in a dark closet known as the punishment room. Despite the threats, Iqbal often spoke up when he thought something was unfair. Once, when he refused to stay and work all night, he was hung upside down in the punishment room. He ran away many times and even went to a police station to report the abuse. The police officer drove Iqbal back to the carpet factory where he was beaten badly and warned never to try escaping again. Sometimes Iqbal was fined for his defiance. With every fine, his debt grew. Other members of his family added to his debt by taking more loans. His original debt was 600 rupees, or about $12. Over the next few years, it grew by more than 20-fold. After working for 6 years, Iqbal earned only 40 cents a day, and it seemed unlikely he would ever be free. He had no way of knowing that people in his country were trying to rescue children like him. Years before Iqbal was born, a Pakistani journalism student named Ehsan Allah Khan learned about the horrific conditions endured by bonded workers. He started an organization that became the Bonded Labor Liberation Front, or BLLF. Khan went to prison 12 times because of his activism, but he never gave up. He traveled to Europe to encourage countries to boycott rugs made in Pakistan. He started schools that children who had been freed could get an education. He fought for legal change, and in 1992, when Iqbal was 10 years old, the government of Pakistan finally passed a law ending bonded labor and canceling the debts that kept children enslaved. Of course, the factory owners didn't want their workers to learn that they had rights or that their debts were gone. Iqbal's Thedakar warned the children to stay away from the BLLF, but that only made Iqbal more curious. He snuck out of the factory and went to a BLLF Freedom Day celebration. He couldn't believe what he heard. There were laws to protect children like him, and his debt was officially canceled. From the stage, Khan spotted the child listening in the corner and called him up to introduce himself. At 10, Iqbal was the size of a child half his age, emaciated from poor nutrition, back bowed from years of being hunched over the loom, breathing heavily. But Iqbal bravely joined Khan on stage. "My name is Iqbal Masih," he said. His voice trembled, but he went on to share his story. After the rally, Iqbal didn't return to the factory. A BLLF lawyer helped him get a freedom letter, which stated that he was free according to the law. But Iqbal wanted to help other young workers. With the support of the BLLF, he went to the factory and handed the Thedakar his freedom letter. Then he called to the children, "Come with me and be free." Khan made arrangements for Iqbal to move to the city of Lahore to study at BLLF's Freedom Campus. It was only 18 miles from Mirinka. I'm sorry, I had such a hard time. It looks like but I looked it up. It's Mirinka. But it was like a different world. Iqbal played cricket in the park. He went to the theater to watch kung fu movies. He studied hard, and when he went home to visit, he shared his new knowledge with his little sister. As he learned more about the world, he wanted to play a bigger role. I want to be like Abraham Lincoln, he said, and free the slave children of Pakistan. Iqbal began traveling with BLLF, attending demonstrations and visiting carpet factories. He told enslaved children about the new laws, and thousands of them followed him to freedom. Journalists and human rights activists from around the world visited Iqbal's school. He enjoyed speaking to them, and his words and stories educated and moved people, making them more aware of experiences of bonded children and more determined to take action to protect them. In 1994, Khan took Iqbal to Sweden, where Iqbal spoke in a school at a conference. His activism was gaining international attention, and he was invited to the United States to receive a Reebok Human Rights Award. While in Boston, Iqbal visited another school. I understand that you are studying slavery in the United States, he told the students. I'm here to tell you that it is still alive. The children were shocked. They asked him many questions and promised to help in his fight to free bonded children. Iqbal's Thedekar had told him that Americans... Oops, pages are stuck together.
It happens.
It happens. The Americans were the reason children were enslaved, saying that they liked cheap carpets and wanted bonded labor to continue. Iqbal said he was happy to learn that Americans were not the demons that he had imagined. Iqbal's activism didn't keep him busy all the time. During his visit, he watched cartoons, saw an IMAX movie, and played computer games. He also went out for pizza, which he didn't like at all. Look at that face.
Wow.
The chef made him risotto which he ate happily. It was much more like the rice he was used to.
That's true.
When he returned home to Pakistan, Iqbal continued his work to eradicate bonded children labor. His efforts led to the closure of many factories and to freedom for thousands of children. The factory owners were angry, and Iqbal received death threats, but he never stopped fighting. In 1995, during a visit with his family in Murdikai, Iqbal was shot while riding a bicycle. He died instantly and was buried the next day near his family's home. Happy.
I know, man. Yeah.
More than 800 people attended his funeral, and more than 3,000 protesters, most of them children, marched through the streets of Lahore. They demanded that child labor be abolished in honor of his memory. The government considered the shooting a random act of violence, but many people blamed the carpet factory owners. Iqbal's death made international headlines, and Western countries canceled millions of dollars worth of carpet orders.
Yeah.
Those whose lives Iqbal Masih had touched wanted to ensure that his legacy lived on. Inspired by his activism, children worldwide have stepped forward to join the fight against child labor.
That's something, man. I mean, it's horrible on so many levels.
It is, but you know what strikes me the most is that young child, that boy, had so much initiative, and you know, he cared about other people. He wasn't like feeling sorry for himself.
Yeah,
you know, and
it reminded me too of Harriet Tubman and how when she was free, like she still went back to get more people free,
and helped other people to become free. Yes,
and then also the carpet owners, like the carpet factory owner guy that didn't tell them that the children, like the child labor was outlawed. That's exactly like what happened here during times of enslavement, when like that's why they have Juneteenth, because it took 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation for it to get to Galveston.
Yes.
And it makes me sick that still like so many years, like that was 100 years after enslavement in chattel slavery in the United States, and still happening around the world,
Right, but living here, we don't
We
always
didn't
learn
know
about
about
it.
it. Right,
we
right,
think
right,
it's
right.
all in the past.
I know, and it's exactly like enslavement here. We think the effects of slavery are over. They're not.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
They'll last forever.
And so it'll take 100 years
Yeah.
for them to get even. You know what I mean? Like, it just makes me sad. But you're right, though. See, I'm going down a dark path. But it makes me,
this is
but
so
it's true.
amazing.
Yes, it's uplifting because it has to start with one. And we think about, like, people like a Rosa Parks, like an Iqbal Masih, like, Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass. So many others, who just, like, were so brave. And thank you, Miss Jan.
Yeah.
It makes me definitely want to check where my clothing is made.
Yes. Yeah, that was something that I hadn't really had on my radar until I read this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't buy new clothing except for new shoes, so I do want to make sure about that because I know shoe factories can be very cruel in their conditions. So I'll have to check that out next time I buy some shoes.
Yeah. Well, we only have one more activist left.
Yes, I saw, and I don't know anything about her either, so I'm really excited.
This is amazing. Maybe we have
those
more
new
now.
books should be in. I ordered them. They came in.
And Malala,
dude, I'm excited. Look at that little picture of her. Yeah. So thank you, Miss Jan.
Thank you, Miss Ing.
And
anybody who's
and
listening.
Everybody, dude, just love one another. Love yourselves and love one another. And if you make a decision with love, it can never be wrong.
There you go.
That's right. Bye, Miss Jan. Thank you. Bye.